So this last week I've built 5 mocks using 2 basic rules that I'm only using the Lego I currently own, and I'm going to build each one within a day. The reason for using these 2 basic rules was because they're sort of 2 of the reasons that seem to stop most people from actually building anything and getting it finished. And I've used this excuse in the past that I've thought, oh, if I only had this piece or if I had these pieces, I could build something and end up building nothing. When really I've got loads of Lego, and the idea of sort of finding a way to use what you have to build something was appealing to me. And the build it in a day thing was so the ideas drag on. There was a set deadline, so I'd actually focus on getting something done and not going to a crazy big scale trying to build a giant skyscraper when I just simply didn't have time to. It made the models sort of smaller, more focused build. Using the pieces I had, I couldn't be thinking if I had these sloped pieces or certain arches or so on. So using those 2 rules or guides was hopefully going to make me more creative and actually come up with some models. And these are the 5 I end up building over the week. There's a more detailed look at them on their own separate videos for each day. But basically there's 2 dioramas, a beach and a castle, one at minifig scale, one at micro scale. There's a camera which is tried to be a scale model of my camera, my Fujifilm X100F. There's a building which looks slightly plain, but there's some details. It's just sort of a town, city building. And then there's a weird attempt at doing a zombie head, which is where ambition sort of got the better of me, and the ideas for a fully 3D head turned into this sort of 2D, 2.5D zombie head with glasses and a brain. But the individual builds I'm really pleased with. I've said before that I built sets, but I'd always sort of struggle when it came to coming up with my own creations. I'd either have an idea and think I don't have the parts for it, or I'd sort of just sit there struggling for what to build, end up messing around with a few ideas and not build anything. And quite often I get carried away in the scale. This is something that happened before I made the zombie head. I thought I'd make a plane, and the first set of wings I made were ridiculously big. And I realised if I wanted to make a plane to that scale, it would be taking me weeks, not a day. So then I scrapped that idea because I just kept making everything too big. So I ended up with this zombie head when I tried to do something different. So that day probably was the longest time spent trying to come up with something. Whereas the building next to it, which I think looks quite impressive, if you just look at them in a line at the building, it's size-wise and there are details on there. That was the easiest to build. It's pretty much a box shape just with detailing on it. I had the bricks sorted out, the grey and the tan brick effect pieces. So that was a big help. And doing this process, it has made me realise that actually having your Lego sorted out into sort of basic, so you know where the pieces are, is making a big difference. To start with, I spent a lot of time just searching around for the right pieces, specifically on this camera when I had to get the right size, trying to come up with different ways to match the scale of the actual camera, or with the castle trying to make each tower symmetrical. There was a lot of time looking for pieces. As I was building these, I was also sorting through my Lego and arranging it into basic piles, slightly generic for now, but basically it made it a lot easier to find the pieces I need. And I've realised that this experiment this week has made me start thinking that rather than thinking I need these pieces to build it or I need a certain colour or whatever, if I just use the Lego I've got and just start building something, my ideas will change and develop and I'll actually start coming up with models. I did a Lego survey and I think these were sort of 2 of the top reasons why people struggle to build anything, not having the right parts and not having any ideas. And the ideas thing was an issue. But generally, I think on all these models, how I started the idea was basically finding one piece that sort of struck an idea in my head. For the beach, it was literally I found a triangle plate and I thought it looks like sand. The castles, it was the tower tops. The camera, it was the lens, and I realised it looked like a camera lens. For the building, it's just because I had loads of bricks and the large transparent windows. It made sense to make a building. It just sort of formed itself, really, that one. And then the zombie head was I made the glasses and the nose, and then colours-wise, I made it in green and thought classic zombie. So hopefully these 2 rules, or guidelines, not rules, you don't need rules in Lego, do you? We don't need to call the Lego police in, should help me hopefully. And they might help you, who knows, going forward in creating some more builds.